Hi, I'm Orilium, and this is my TBR for April of 2026. That is what I hope to read in April 2026. So Orilium is happening, and we'll get to that, but let's start first with the things I want to read that aren't connected with Orilium. First and foremost, the book I'm actually in the middle of reading. That would be The Yiddish Policeman's Union by Michael Chabon. I meant to finish this last Shabbos, but I did not in the end have time to. And I am really enjoying this book. It's a heavy book, but I'm really enjoying it. So this is basically this is a murder mystery that takes place in an alternate universe where Israel did not manage to become the nation it is today, and instead became a tiny falling apart nation, and a lot of refugees fled. But also, before the Holocaust, America agreed to set up a refugee point for Jews in a small peninsula in Alaska called Sitka. So this happened in the 2000s, and our main character is a policeman who is the descendants of Holocaust refugees and Holocaust survivors. But the thing that is happening is that the time is up. America said only until a certain point are the Jews going to be allowed to be here, and the time is up. So he is trying to solve this murder mystery while being very depressed, while he knows that there's like a time limit until how much longer he's allowed to be in this place. And then the other thing I want to do is continue reading this Batman series. And so for that, I want to read Batman number 489, Batman number 490, Batman number 491, Batman number 492, Detective Comics number 659, Batman number 493, Detective Comics number 660, Batman number 484, Detective Comics number 661, Batman number 495, and Detective Comics number 662. This is a prelude, actually. It's not a real series, but it is a setup for a real series called Nightfall, but it actually has lots of different tiny series inside of it. So I cannot tell you one thing that it's that is about one thing. It's about Batman, and there are other things that happen. Then I also was starting from last month, to get back into reading short stories. So the short stories I want to read with God's help in April are The Garden of Spices by Elle Montgomery, White Magic by Elle Montgomery, and The Trace of the White Lady by Elle Montgomery. And then I want to read some stories that won the Edgar Awards, which are horror awards, in the 50s. So Diagnosis Homicide by Lawrence Blochman, Fancies and Goodnights by John Collier, Something to Hide by Philip MacDonald, Someone Like You by Roald Dahl, and The House Party by Stanley Ellen. Now let's get into Orilium. So, if you don't know, Orilium is a readathon where basically your characters you make up a character and they go to medical university, and there are all kinds of different degrees they can be studying for, and for each degree you have different classes you need to read for, and the classes are essentially the prompts. So I'm normal, so I have 3 characters. But let's go through the prompts. We'll be going through in alphabetical order, not according to my characters. So let's start with alchemy. So the class for alchemy is alchemical reiteration, and the prompt is to reread. So this is for my character Radha, and I am planning to reread Wuthering Heights. I read this once before, I'm not sure exactly when, a few years ago, and I absolutely loved it. There were definitely parts of this were tough, especially the parts that were written in Yorkshire, which is not really English, and definitely had a hard time understanding it, but I absolutely love this book. So what is this book about? Basically, we're following this guy who comes to this random house in the Yorkshire moors, and they tell him this story about the history of this house. And it all starts years earlier, when the guy who is the father of the house finds this abandoned baby who is not white and decides to raise him as his own. But because the baby is not white, he is subject to racist abuse. And everything kind of goes downhill from there. It's a very, very good book. Okay, the next prompt in order of alphabetical order is animal studies, and I have 2 characters that need to do this, Radha and Miriam. So the prompt for this, the class is shadow wolves, and the prompt is wolves. They can be in the cover, the title, part of the content. It could also be werewolves, but I just decided to go for the word wolf in the title for both of them. So for Radha, I'm planning to read The Wolf of Oren Yarrow by K.S. Veloso. This is a fantasy book where the wolf in question is our main character, who is a ruthless woman. I don't know more about it than that. Then for Miriam, I'm planning to read a fantasy, Hunger Makes the Wolf by Alex Wells, and we're following a different woman character who is also ruthless, and I believe she works for like an illegal thieving company. And let's see. Yes, so our main character is part of a biker gang, and she discovers that they're killing off the people who are family members of the guy who's in charge of this biker gang, who she is really close to. So she decides to figure out what's happening. Okay, next in alphabetical order is astronomy. And for that, I also have two characters, this time Radha and Rafaela. I forgot to say what they're each learning. So Miriam is learning to be an Elia excavationist, which is essentially an archaeologist. Rafaela is learning to be a star whisperer, and Radha is learning to be a Feywild's map maker. Cartographer. Feywild's cartographer. Feywild's is obviously the place where the Fey live. And Star Whisperer is someone who is kind of like cross between an astronomist and an astrologist. Anyways, back to astronomy, which both Radha and Rafaela have. The class is Galactic Outskirts, and the prompt is top shelf. So this can be physically on the top shelf, but it can also just be the top of your TBR. So for Radha, I went with top of my TBR. I really want to read Winds of Change by Mercedes Laquet this month, so that's what I put on for her. Winds of Change is a second in a trilogy, but this trilogy continues from other series, so I don't think I can say much about it. All I can say is that we're following our character Elspeth. She is a princess of a land that is currently being threatened. So she needs to go find some magical help because her land really needs that magical help. And in the first book, when she goes to find the magical help, she also discovers some people who also really, really need some help because of someone who is threatening them with magic. So this is the second book in that trilogy. Then for Rafaela, I decided to actually take a book that is on my top shelf currently. As you can see, I am reaching for the top shelf. And that is Baba Ve'ol Haganuz by Shai Chalka. So Shai Chalka, I've been reading these comic books about Baba that he's been writing basically since I was old enough to read them. And these all take place during the Roman colonization of Israel. And they're based on different Jewish stories in the Talmud. So this is specifically based on a midrash that is well known. Like the title is based on a midrash that is well known and that I really like. But I'm sure there are going to be other things in here that are just great. And I just love. Let me see if I can find anything without spoiling myself. I don't know. Here's a pun. This is. You don't know because it's in Hebrew, but he says maybe, but in Hebrew, maybe also means hanging, and he's hanging, so Shai Chalka does all kinds of stuff like that. Okay. Next is Art of Illusion, which only Rafaela has. The class of Art of Illusion is Alternate Illusions, so the reading prompt is Unusual Formatting. So this one was definitely one I had trouble with because that's hard. In the end, I chose to go with Superwoman, 6 Scientists Who Change the World by Lori Layler. This is a nonfiction book, but instead of being a nonfiction book that's rich in prose, straight from the beginning to end, it's 6 short biographies of 6 women scientists. So that has unusual formatting, and I'm excited to read it, but I'm nervous because sometimes these little biography books have glaring mistakes. Okay. Next is Conjuration. Only Miriam's Conjuration. Now, Conjuration, the class is Inspiration Boost, and the prompt was first enticing book you see on social media. So you're supposed to go to social media of your choice, scroll, and see the first enticing book you want to read. But that just really, really did not appeal to me. And you can use this thing. You get points for your characters as you read. And so I have some points saved up for each of my characters. And then with these points, you can buy fun stuff. But you can also that help you do the readathon better for you. So, one of the things you can buy is a scroll of exchange where you switch out the prompt for that class with the prompt for a different class. So I switch it out with the prompt for astronomy because I really want to read my next Batman comic, which, as I mentioned, is Batman number 489. Right? Or Batman number 489. Okay. After Conjuration comes Demonology, which only Radha has. So Demonology, the class is Common Demonic Dwellings, and the prompt was House on the Cover. I'm sure there were a lot of things that could have gotten this, but the one that caught my eye was also by an author that I wanted to read more of, and that is The Witch of Woodland by Laurel Snyder. I read Laurel Snyder's book, one of her books, back in January, and I absolutely loved it. So they're both kind of similar in that the one I read and this one, in that they're about a Jewish girl who's around 11 years old who deals with magic. But this one is much more magic focused. We are following Sippy, who's preparing for her bat mitzvah, and her magic has suddenly become much stronger to the point where she accidentally brought into the world this girl with no memory. I absolutely loved Bigger Than a Bread Box, so I really hope I love this one too. Okay, the next subject is Elemental Studies. This is also for Radha. She has the most classes, and Miriam's least. So Elemental Studies, the prompt is temperature control. The class is temperature controls. The prompt is temperature word in the title. So I chose Chilling Effect by Valerie Valdez. So Chilling Effect is a science fiction about a woman whose sister is kidnapped, so she has to do a ton of missions quickly to get the ransom. And the summary really reminds me, I was looking for it, I cannot find the series title, but it really reminds me of a different sci-fi series I read. So I really love that series. So hopefully this one I like too. Okay. Next is Elemental Studies. Oh, no, we did just set Elemental Studies. Next is Inscription, which both Radha and Rafaela have. So Inscription, the class is Dating Intricacies, and the reading prompt is Day of the Week in the title. Now, the thing is, I don't have anything real here. So for Radha, I was planning to read Friday the Rabbi Slept Late by Harry Kimmelman. However, despite the fact that the library said they had it, they did not have it. So for that one, I decided to go with A Scroll of Exchange. And again, I went to Astronomy. The book on the top of my wish list shelf on the Library East site was The Library Mouse by Dallin Kirk. This is a picture book about a mouse who lives in the library. I heard the first page and I thought it sounded wonderful and immediately went and looked up if the library had it, and they did. Now for Rafaela, I stretched her prompt a bit. I decided to go with Here Today, Gone Tomorrow by Nancy Krulik. Technically, both today and tomorrow are days in the week. That is stretching. But it's on my TBR, and Friday the Rabbi Slept Late, and this was the only book on my TBR with actual day of the week, and I really wanted to read this one as well. So I decided to stretch the prompt. So Here Today, Gone Tomorrow is a Kitty Kazoo Switcheroo book. These are early reader chapter books where we're following a girl named Katie, who in the first book she has a terrible day and she wishes that she could be anyone but herself. Unfortunately, her wish comes true, and every book a magic wind comes and switches her into someone else. In this book, she's going to be switched into a hairdresser. Okay. Then the next prompt is lore. Actually, Radha does not have lore. The ones who have lore are Rafaela and Miriam. So the lore class is ancient speculative lore, and the prompt is a dystopia or a utopia. So I went with a book by Premi Muhammad for both of them. For Ella, I went with a novella, and what can we offer you tonight? And with Miriam, I went with Beneath the Rising. Now, Beneath the Rising is the first in the series. So my real plan is to read Beneath the Rising first, and if I like it, then put the second book instead of And What Can We Offer You Tonight? Because I read 2 Premi Muhammad books, I think, and I love The Butcher of the Forest, and I didn't think her short stories were that great. So, anyways, And What Can We Offer You Tonight is a sci-fi murder mystery where our main character, Jewel, is a prostitute and her best friend is murdered, but comes back to life. Oh, it's not a murder mystery, I'm sorry. They're trying to get revenge. Like I said, it's only 80 pages. Beneath the Rising was dystopia. Okay. So I seem to have been mixing up Beneath the Rising with the Annual Migration of Clouds, which is also by Premi Muhammad, is also the first in the series, but is actually a dystopia. So climate change has caused the world to change, followed by a mind-altering fungus. I love mind-altering fungus. So we're following Raid, who carries some mind-altering fungus, and she has an opportunity to move to a safe place, but she doesn't want to leave her family. And it seems she can't even trust her own mind because of the small mind-altering fungus. Very up my alley. Okay, next. For Rafaela, Psionics and Divination. So, Psionics and Divination class is a reading past and future, and the prompt is word time in the title. I actually have a real book with word time in the title. I think it's the only one on my TBR, but it is Long Time No Sea Monster by Nancy Krulik. So this is the second new series in a quartet, where it's kind of a cross between the Magic School Bus and, well, and the Magic Treehouse. Basically, we have this teacher who takes these kids to different places around the world, and something fantastical does happen in each book. So the first one, we went to Egypt and they met a real mummy, and now I assume they're going to Scotland to meet the Loch Ness Monster. Okay, then there are 2 more prompts. For Radha, there is shape-shifting. So the class for this is volume modification, and the prompt was flip a coin, heads under 400 pages and tails over 400 pages. I'll put the place I flipped the coin up over here. But I got tails over 400 pages, and I decided to go with Asunder by Kirsten Hall, because I read a book by her, I think, last year, and I really liked it. So we're following Karis, who can speak to people who just died, and she uses this to solve murders. But she messes kind of up, and she accidentally binds someone to her shadow. So they need to figure out how to deal with that. It kind of looks like it's going to have romance, which I don't love, but hopefully there's not too much romance. And lastly, for Miriam, the last class is Restoration by Restoration, and the class name is Restorative Adoration. So here they had, the prompt was to ask for 5-star titles and then pick one. What people in reality did is they went to the Discord and just started posting groups of 5 books that they rated 5 stars. And in one of those groups, someone put Beach Read, which is great. And the reason it's great is because I had just taken it out of the library. So Betrayed by Emily Henry is, if you don't know, basically we have two characters who are both authors who happen to be living next to each other, and they both have writer's block. So they're very different authors. One is like literary fiction and the other is romance chick lit, and so they decide to, in order to break out of their writer's block, they're each going to switch genres. The guy who writes literary fiction is going to try to write romance, and the woman who writes romance is going to try to write literary fiction. So I think that sounds really fun, even though I'm not generally such a big romance fan, but I've also heard, since this came out, I've just heard good things about it. So those are all the things I hope to read in April, and I very much doubt that I'm going to get to all of them, but there they are.